New blog '08. The next day we returned to take another step towards discipleship. Simon Peter was asking questions and doing some sort of selection. Several were chosen to go to the same place as yesterday, where Thomas was, and the remainder of us stayed with James. Then Peter asked the few women in the group to go with Salome, who had come over to join us. She recognized me, and we greeted each other warmly. Glad as I was to be there, a part of me felt that women were somehow not expected or able to pursue the same teachings as the men. I hoped I was just imagining it, but I dared to ask Peter whether women could sometime be allowed to go with the other group, and he answered that women had an equal role, which was organized by Yeshua's mother Mary and the other female disciples. My heart dropped, crying to me that it thirsted for the teaching of Yeshua himself. Yet my sensibility told me I could have no complaint, that to be with the Messiah and to work beside his mother was more than I could ever have dreamt of. She had helped me so much on that first fateful day at Marimian that I felt very close to her. I held my peace. As we walked together, Salome told me that Rachel had gone back to Tyre to sort out some business matters, but was expected back any day. And looking around as cheers erupted, we saw that the master had arrived at the lakeside and was very soon surrounded by a crowd of onlookers as he oversaw the care and washing of a group of lepers. They had been here the day before, when John had done the same, and asked them to come again today. We heard later that Yeshua was pleased with their improvement, telling them to keep their faith and purity of heart, for wholeness to grow anew in them. It was so incredible to be here and to witness everything that all else was driven from my thoughts. But the crowd had grown deep around the master healer, and we had our appointed duties to attend to. Returning to Marimian, along the now familiar and dusty road, I told Salome how wonderful it was to no longer be filled with those hateful demons, the hungry spirits that had inhabited me. How sweet it was to be able to feel life's freshness again in every moment, and how the reunion with my mother had brought a renewal of my worldly fortunes as well. Our Magdalene house could accommodate quite a few guests, and it was my mother's dearest wish that Yeshua might visit and even stay there if he was travelling by that way. Entering Marimian by the side door, we found Yeshua's mother and several other women working inside. She greeted me with a hug, creasing my being into smiles, and introduced me to another woman called Susanna, who I thought had the mark of being wealthy, but was still humble with it. About the same age as Yeshua's mother, yet she was happy to be helping in the house, even just to be washing clothes. In fact, she was shining with happiness and contentment. Listening to their talk, I realized how little I knew of these women. Afterwards, I found out that Susanna herself owned large estates to the north and was able to give quite a lot of money in support of Yeshua's work. She had known Mary before the Master had returned from abroad, and so already had received some insights about him, more than confirmed by everything she had experienced this last year, freeing her from the trap of believing in this world, transforming her life. It became clear as well that the younger Salome was a talented organizer, much relied on by Yeshua and his mother, whilst my rescuer Rachel was not only learning so much from the Master, but she also had the means in Tyre to help him in her turn. For he had made plans to send disciples all over Galilee, and these were the ones that the Master had been spending extra time instructing. Yeshua would follow after them, to bring the kingdom within to all who were awakened to the possibility. It was my pleasure now to be in a position to offer material support as well, and to have it gratefully received. and Mother thought that perhaps Magdalene could be an early stop along the way around the lake to Tiberias. She would mention this to her son. He worked so incredibly hard. It seemed there was hardly a moment when people didn't surround him. His close disciples protected him when they could, but his work amongst the sick and all those he was teaching was more than any other could have maintained. And I also wanted just so much to receive the Master's teaching, to be his disciple. Yet this idea persisted in me, that others were deciding who could or could not receive it. Here, now, was an opportunity to ask Mother about it. But it didn't feel right to suggest to her, of all people, that some of the disciples didn't want women to be taught like them. To me, though, the customary barriers were still there, raised against women, not to be as acceptable to God as men were. This had always been such a personal issue in my life, one that I knew I must face up to myself, and somehow in a way that would be filled with joyfulness. I don't quite know what Mother saw in my face, but she laid a hand of kindness on my arm and said, "The day is coming very soon."